Husband's childhood friends convinced him to disrespect me during our anniversary celebration, and my marriage ended over a hot tub incident that my husband claims was just a joke. So I packed my bags and never looked back. I'm Kylie, 26F, and my husband is Jasper, 27M. We've been married for 2 years and together for 5. I'm writing this because I genuinely don't know if I overreacted to what happened last weekend. Jasper has this group of friends from high school: Noah, 27M, Timothy, 28M, and Devin, 26M. They call themselves the Core 4 and have been inseparable since they were 14. When I first met them, I thought their friendship was sweet. They had traditions, inside jokes, and genuinely seemed to care about each other. Jasper always talked about how lucky he was to have friends like that. The 4 of them do everything together. They go camping every summer, have a fantasy football league, and meet up every Friday night for drinks. At first I loved that Jasper had such close friends. My own friend group kind of fell apart after college, so I was a bit jealous of their bond. They welcomed me into their circle and I started joining their Friday nights and even went on a few of their camping trips. But over the years I started noticing things. They never really grew up. Their humor was still stuck in high school. They would make jokes about bodily functions, play pranks on each other, and act like teenagers whenever they got together. I chalked it up to guys being guys and figured it was harmless. Jasper and I were supposed to celebrate our second wedding anniversary last Saturday. We had dinner reservations at this fancy restaurant downtown, but Jasper suggested we change plans. His parents were out of town for the weekend and he thought it would be fun to have the guys over for a barbecue and use the pool afterward. His parents have this beautiful house with a huge backyard and an in-ground pool with a hot tub attached. I wasn't thrilled about spending our anniversary with his friends, but Jasper seemed excited about it. He said we could have a romantic dinner, just the 2 of us, later in the week. I agreed because I wanted him to be happy and I figured it could still be fun. The barbecue went well. Noah brought his girlfriend Kelly, 25F, and Timothy brought his new girlfriend, Evelyn, 24F. Devin is single. We had burgers, played some music, and everyone was having a good time. Jasper was being extra affectionate with me, holding my hand and telling everyone how lucky he was to have me. I started thinking maybe this wasn't such a bad way to spend our anniversary after all. Around 9 p.m., someone suggested we get in the hot tub. It was a warm evening and the idea sounded perfect. The girls and I went inside to change into our swimsuits while the guys got the hot tub ready. When we came back out, the water was steaming and the jets were running. I got in first, followed by Kelly and Evelyn. The guys were still on the deck grabbing beers and towels. Jasper, Noah, Timothy, and Devin all got in at the same time. We were all sitting there chatting and relaxing. The water felt amazing after being in the sun all day. About 10 minutes after we got in, Jasper looked at his 3 friends and said something like, "You guys ready for the challenge?" The other 3 nodded and grinned. Then Jasper counted down from 3. What happened next still makes me sick to think about. On his count of 1, all 4 of them closed their eyes and got this concentrated look on their faces. After about 30 seconds, Noah opened his eyes and said done. Then Timothy said done. Then Devin said done. Jasper opened his eyes last and said finished. They all started laughing hysterically. Noah high-fived Timothy and said something about Jasper being the winner this time. Devin complained that he came in second place, which meant he had to buy the first round next Friday. Kelly, Evelyn, and I just sat there staring at them. None of us understood what had just happened. Kelly asked what they were talking about and that made them laugh even harder. Jasper wiped tears from his eyes and explained that they've been doing this since they were kids. Whenever they're in a pool or hot tub together, they have a contest to see who can pee the longest. It's been their tradition for over 10 years. The winner gets bragging rights and the loser buys drinks. I felt like someone had poured ice water over my head. I asked if he was serious, if they had actually just peed in the hot tub while we were all sitting in it. Jasper nodded and said it was no big deal, because the chlorine kills everything instantly. Kelly and Evelyn looked as disgusted as I felt. Evelyn got out of the hot tub immediately and started wrapping herself in a towel. Kelly followed her. I sat there for another few seconds trying to process what had just happened. The warm water that had felt so relaxing moments before now felt contaminated and gross. I got out without saying anything to Jasper. I could hear him calling after me, asking where I was going, but I didn't respond. I went straight to the master bathroom and turned on the shower. I scrubbed my entire body with soap 3 times. I brushed my teeth twice. I washed my hair twice. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was dirty. When I came out of the bathroom, Jasper was sitting on the bed waiting for me. He asked what was wrong and I told him exactly how I felt. I said I was disgusted and disrespected. I explained that what he did was unsanitary and completely inappropriate when other people were in the water with him. Jasper rolled his eyes and said I was being dramatic. He insisted that it was just a harmless tradition and that the chlorine made it perfectly safe. He said, all guys do stuff like this, and I was making it into a bigger deal than it needed to be. I tried to explain that it wasn't about the safety aspect. It was about the fact that he thought it was okay to do something like that without asking the rest of us first. I said it was disrespectful and childish. Jasper got defensive. He said I was trying to ruin his friendship with the guys and that I never let him have fun. He accused me of being uptight and said his friends' girlfriends weren't making such a big deal about it. I told him this wasn't about his friendships or about me being controlling. This was about basic respect and consideration for other people. I said I felt violated and disgusted. Jasper scoffed and said I was being ridiculous. He said it again, that I was making this into a way bigger deal than it needed to be. Those exact words. He said I needed to get over it and stop being so sensitive. I didn't sleep in our bed that night. I went to the guest room and lay awake thinking about what had happened, not just the incident in the hot tub, but Jasper's complete dismissal of my feelings. Afterward, he didn't apologize. He didn't acknowledge that what he did was wrong. He just kept telling me I was overreacting. The next morning I tried to talk to him again. I explained calmly that I needed him to understand why I was upset. I said I wasn't trying to attack his friendship or control his behavior. I just wanted him to acknowledge that what he did was inappropriate and disrespectful. Jasper sighed and said he didn't understand why I was still talking about it. He said it was over and done with and I needed to move on. When I pressed him for an apology, he said he was sorry. I felt bad, but he didn't think he did anything wrong. We spent the entire day going in circles. Every time I tried to explain my perspective, Jasper would dismiss it. He kept saying I was being too sensitive, that I was overreacting, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. He said his friends thought I was being crazy and their girlfriends had already gotten over it. I found out later that Kelly and Evelyn had also been upset. Kelly had texted me that morning saying she was grossed out and couldn't believe. The guys thought it was okay. Evelyn had left early that night because she was so uncomfortable. By Sunday evening I was exhausted from trying to get Jasper to understand. I told him that if he said I was overreacting or making too big a deal of it one more time, I was going to pack a bag and leave. I meant it. Jasper looked at me and said, "You're making way too big a deal of this." He said it slowly, like he was challenging me to follow through on my threat. I packed a bag and drove to my parents' house. I've been here for 3 days now. Jasper has been calling and texting non-stop. At first his messages were angry. He said I was being childish and that I couldn't run away every time we had a disagreement. Then his tone shifted to apologetic. He said he was sorry and that he loved me. His latest messages are desperate. He's begging me to come home so we can work this out. But I keep thinking about that moment when he looked me in the eye and dismissed my feelings. Last time it wasn't about the pee, it was about the complete lack of respect he showed me. It was about his willingness to prioritize a stupid childhood prank over his wife's dignity. My parents have been supportive. My dad said I can stay here as long as I need to. My mom said she's proud of me for standing up for myself. They both think Jasper's behavior was completely inappropriate. I'm supposed to go back to work tomorrow and I don't know what to tell people when they ask about my weekend. I don't know if I should go home and try to work things out with Jasper or if this is something I can't get past. So I'm asking, am I the asshole for leaving my husband over this? Am I really making too big a deal of it? Like he says. Update 1, I didn't expect my post to blow up like it did. Thank you to everyone who commented and sent messages of support. The overwhelming response helped me realize I wasn't crazy for being upset about what happened. I want to update you on what's been happening since I posted. It's been 2 weeks since I left Jasper and things have gotten much more complicated than I expected. After my post went viral, several people sent it to people they knew in real life. Someone who knows Jasper's family saw it and forwarded it to his mom. His parents came back from their trip early and called me directly. They were horrified when they found out what Jasper and his friends had done in their hot tub. Jasper's mom called me crying. She apologized over and over and said she was disgusted by her son's behavior. She said she raised him better than that and couldn't believe he would do something so disrespectful. She also mentioned that she would never be able to use that hot tub again without thinking about what happened. Jasper's dad called me separately. He was furious. He said Jasper had always been immature but this crossed a line. He told me that he was considering making Jasper pay to have the hot tub professionally cleaned and sanitized, even though they would probably just end up replacing it entirely. Jasper was apparently mortified that his parents found out. He called me that same day screaming about how I had humiliated him and ruined his relationship with his family. He said I had no right to air our private business on the internet and that I was vindictive and cruel. I told him I never mentioned his name or any identifying details in my post. I said it wasn't my fault that people recognized the story. Jasper said I knew exactly what I was doing when I posted it and that I was trying to destroy his reputation. The conversation got heated. Jasper said I was being manipulative and trying to turn his family against him. He said I was acting like a victim when I was really the one causing all the drama. He accused me of enjoying the attention I was getting online. I hung up on him. The next day I got a call from Kelly. She said she needed to talk to me about something important. We met for coffee and she told me something that made my stomach drop. Kelly said that after I left that night the guys had kept talking about their prank. Noah had been bragging about how they'd been doing it for years, not just in pools and hot tubs, but in other places too. He mentioned that they'd done it in the ocean when they went to the beach, in hotel pools when they traveled and even in public pools when they were teenagers. But then Timothy said something that made Kelly sick. He said they'd done it in Jasper's apartment complex pool multiple times over the years, including times when other people were swimming. He laughed about how no one ever knew and said it was their little secret. Kelly said she was horrified. She realized that she'd probably been swimming in their pee multiple times without knowing it. She said Evelyn had been there too and heard the whole conversation. Evelyn had been so disgusted that she broke up with Timothy the next day. I asked Kelly why she was telling me this. She said she thought I deserved to know the full extent of what I was dealing with. She said Noah had been doing this stuff for so long that he didn't even think it was wrong anymore. She was planning to break up with him too. Kelly also told me that the guys had been talking about my reaction that night. They'd been making jokes about how I was being dramatic and saying I was acting like a crazy wife. Jasper had apparently laughed along with them and said he didn't understand why I was so upset about something so harmless. Hearing that Jasper had been making fun of me with his friends while I was upstairs crying made me feel sick. It confirmed everything I'd been thinking about his lack of respect for me. I decided to call Jasper's mom back. I told her what Kelly had shared with me about the other incidents. She was quiet for a long time, then said she wasn't surprised. She said Jasper had always been influenced by his friends and that she'd noticed he became more immature and inconsiderate when he was around them. She told me something I'd never heard before. Apparently, when Jasper was in college, he'd gotten in trouble for a prank that involved putting something in the campus fountain. His parents had to pay a fine and Jasper had been suspended from school for a week. She said they'd hoped he would grow out of that phase, but it seemed like his friends brought out the worst in him. Jasper's mom said she'd talked to his dad about cutting off financial support if Jasper didn't start acting like an adult. They'd been helping us with our rent and car payments, which I hadn't realized until she mentioned it. She said they were tired of enabling his childish behavior. 2 days later Jasper showed up at my parents' house. He looked terrible. His hair was messy, his clothes were wrinkled and he had dark circles under his eyes. He said he'd been sleeping on Noah's couch because he couldn't afford the rent on our apartment without his parents' help. Jasper apologized. He said he'd been thinking about everything and he realized he'd been wrong. He said he was sorry for dismissing my feelings and for making fun of me with his friends. He promised he would never do anything like that again. But then he said something that made me realize nothing had really changed. He said he understood why I was upset, but he still thought I'd overreacted by leaving and posting about it online. He said he was sorry. I felt disrespected, but he didn't think what he did was as bad as I was making it out to be. I asked him if he understood that what he and his friends had been doing was wrong, not just in our hot tub, but in all the other places Kelly had told me about. Jasper looked confused and asked what I was talking about. When I explained what Kelly had told me, Jasper's face went red. He said Kelly was lying and trying to cause drama. He said Timothy and Noah would never do anything like that in public pools and that I was being ridiculous for believing gossip. I told him that Kelly had no reason to lie and that Evelyn had heard the same conversation. Jasper said Evelyn was probably lying too because she was mad about breaking up with Timothy. I realized that Jasper was never going to take responsibility for his actions. He was never going to admit that what he and his friends had been doing was wrong. He was never going to prioritize my feelings over his friendships. I told him I wanted a divorce. Jasper started crying. He said he loved me and that he would do anything to fix our marriage. He promised he would stop hanging out with his friends. If that's what I wanted, he said he would go to counseling, that he would change, that he would do whatever it took. But I could see in his eyes that he still didn't understand why I was so upset. He was willing to make sacrifices to save our marriage, but he wasn't willing to admit that he'd been wrong. He was treating this like a negotiation instead of acknowledging that he'd violated my trust and dignity. I told him my decision was final. I said I would be staying with my parents while we figured out the divorce process. Jasper begged me to reconsider, but I walked back into the house and closed the door. I filed for divorce. The next day, Jasper has been calling and texting, constantly alternating between apologies and accusations. His parents have been supportive of my decision, which seems to be making things worse for him. I know some people will think I'm being too harsh, but I can't get past the image of Jasper laughing with his friends while I was upstairs crying. I can't get past his complete inability to understand why I was hurt. I can't get past his willingness to prioritize a stupid prank over his wife's dignity. I'm staying with my parents for now while I figure out what comes next. It's been hard, but I know I made the right choice. Update 2, it's been over a month since my last update and I wanted to share what's been happening with the divorce process and some new information that came to light. The divorce has been moving forward relatively smoothly since Jasper and I don't have kids and our only major shared asset is our apartment lease. Things have been less complicated than I expected. My dad helped me find a lawyer who specializes in simple divorce cases, and we've been able to handle most of the paperwork without too much drama. Jasper initially tried to fight the divorce. He hired his own lawyer and said he wanted to try mediation first. I agreed to one mediation session, hoping that maybe a neutral third party could help him understand why I was leaving. The mediation session was a disaster. Jasper spent the entire time talking about how I was being unreasonable and how the whole situation had been blown out of proportion. He kept saying that couples should be able to work through disagreements like this and that I was giving up on our marriage too easily. When the mediator asked him to acknowledge how his actions had affected me, Jasper said he was sorry. I felt hurt, but he still didn't think what he did was wrong enough to end a marriage over. He said he was willing to apologize and move on, but he couldn't understand why I was still dwelling on it. The mediator asked Jasper if he could see how his actions might have made me feel disrespected. Jasper said he understood that I felt that way, but he thought I was being too sensitive. He said his friends' girlfriends hadn't reacted the same way, so he didn't understand why I was different. I told the mediator that this was exactly the problem. Jasper wasn't capable of understanding that his actions were wrong. He was only sorry that I was upset, not sorry for what he'd done. The mediator could see that we weren't going to reach any kind of resolution, so she ended the session early. After the failed mediation, Jasper finally agreed to proceed with the divorce. His lawyer told him that fighting it would only make things more expensive and drawn out. But 2 weeks ago I got a call from Evelyn. She said she had something important to tell me about Jasper and his friends. We met for lunch and what she told me made me realize that my marriage problems went deeper than I'd thought. Evelyn said that after she broke up with Timothy he'd been trying to win her back. During one of their conversations he'd let slip some information about Jasper that he probably shouldn't have shared. Apparently, Jasper had been complaining to his friends about our sex life for months before the hot tub incident. He'd been telling them that I was uptight and boring and that I never wanted to try anything new or exciting. He'd been making jokes about how I was a prude and how he wished I was more adventurous. Evelyn said Timothy had told her that Jasper had been planning to suggest we start doing more things with a friend group, like weekend trips and shared vacation rentals. Jasper had apparently said that he thought if I spent more time with the guys and their girlfriends, I would loosen up and become more fun. The hot tub incident wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment prank. Jasper had been trying to push my boundaries and see how I would react. He'd been testing whether I would go along with his friend's behavior or stand up for myself. Evelyn said Timothy had laughed while telling her this like it was some kind of joke. She said Jasper had apparently been frustrated with me for months and the hot tub prank was his way of showing his friends that he was still one of the guys, even though he was married. I felt sick hearing this. Not only had Jasper disrespected me in the hot tub, but he'd been talking about our private life with his friends and plotting ways to change my personality. He'd been treating our marriage like some kind of game. Evelyn also told me that Noah had been bragging about how he'd influenced Jasper's decision to invite everyone over for our anniversary. He'd apparently suggested that Jasper should prioritize his friends over me and that I needed to learn to be more flexible and accommodating. I realized that Jasper's friends had been actively working to undermine our marriage. They'd been encouraging him to dismiss my feelings and treat me like I was the problem and Jasper had gone along with it because he valued their approval more than my respect. I called Jasper after my conversation with Evelyn. I told him what she'd shared with me and I asked him if it was true. Jasper was quiet for a long time, then said that Timothy had no right to share private conversations. I asked him directly if he'd been complaining about me to his friends. Jasper said that all married guys talk about their relationships with their friends and that I was making it sound worse than it was. He said he'd never said anything really bad about me, just that he wished I was more outgoing sometimes. I asked him if he'd planned the hot tub incident to test my reaction. Jasper denied it but he didn't sound convincing. He said the prank was spontaneous, but he admitted that he'd been hoping I would just laugh it off and not make a big deal about it. I told him I was disgusted that he'd been discussing our private life with his friends and planning ways to change my personality. Jasper said I was twisting everything and making it sound more sinister than it was. He said he'd just been venting to his friends like any normal person would. The conversation confirmed what I'd already suspected: Jasper had never respected me as an equal partner in our marriage. He'd seen me as someone who needed to be managed and changed to fit his idea of what a wife should be. I'm glad I found out about this before we tried to reconcile. It would have been easy for Jasper to apologize for the hot tub incident and promise to never do it again, but knowing that he'd been systematically undermining our marriage with his friends helped make me realize that the problem was much deeper than one stupid prank. The divorce should be finalized within the next month. I've been looking for my own apartment and trying to rebuild my social life. It's been hard, but I'm starting to feel like myself again. Jasper's parents have been incredibly supportive throughout this process. His mom called me last week to apologize again for her son's behavior. She said she was proud of me for standing up for myself and that she hoped Jasper would learn something from this experience. I doubt Jasper will learn anything. He's been telling people that I left him over a harmless prank and that I'm being vindictive by refusing to work things out. He's painting himself as the victim in this situation, which tells me that he still doesn't understand what he did wrong. But that's his problem now, not mine. Update 3, I wanted to give you all a final update on how everything has turned out since my divorce was finalized 2 months ago. The divorce went through without any complications. Jasper and I were able to divide our few shared assets and handle the apartment lease without too much drama. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across town and started over with my own furniture and belongings. Jasper has been living with Noah since he couldn't afford rent on his own. His parents followed through on their threat to cut off financial support and Jasper has been struggling to make ends meet on his salary alone. I heard from his mom that he's been working extra hours and complaining about being broke, but she said they're not going to help him anymore. About 6 weeks ago I got a text from Kelly. She said she had some news about the guys that I might want to know. We met for coffee and she told me that their friend group had completely fallen apart since our divorce. Kelly had broken up with Noah 2 weeks after my last update. She said she couldn't get past the image of him peeing in pools and hot tubs where other people were swimming, she said. Every time she looked at him she thought about how many times he'd probably done it without her knowing. Devin, who was single, had apparently been bragging to people at work about their hot tub prank. One of his coworkers had been disgusted and reported him to HR for inappropriate behavior. Devin didn't get fired, but he got a formal warning and had to attend some kind of workplace behavior training. The real drama started when Timothy tried to get back together with Evelyn. He'd been apologizing and promising to change, but Evelyn had told him she wasn't interested. Timothy had apparently gotten angry and started spreading rumors about Evelyn to their mutual friends, saying she was stuck up and that she'd let him on. Evelyn's brother found out about the rumors and confronted Timothy at a bar. The confrontation turned physical and Timothy ended up with a black eye and a bloody nose. Evelyn's brother also apparently made some threats about what would happen if Timothy didn't stop talking about his sister. Jasper had been there when the fight happened. According to Kelly, he tried to defend Timothy and had gotten into an argument with Evelyn's brother. The whole incident had been embarrassing for all of them and several people had recorded videos that ended up on social media. After the bar fight, the guys started turning on each other. Timothy blamed Jasper for the whole mess, saying that if Jasper hadn't brought me around, none of this would have happened. Noah blamed both of them for dragging him into drama. Devin tried to stay neutral, but he was dealing with his own problems at work. Their Friday night hangout stopped. Their camping trip got cancelled. Their fantasy football league fell apart when they couldn't agree on rules without arguing. The friendship that had seemed so solid for over 10 years crumbled in a matter of weeks. Kelly said Jasper had been trying to reach out to his friends individually, but none of them were interested in reconciling. Timothy was still angry about the bar fight. Noah was focused on dating new women and didn't want to be associated with the drama. Devin was trying to repair his reputation at work and didn't want to be seen with them. Jasper had apparently been calling his mom crying about how he'd lost everything: his wife, his friends, his financial support and his reputation. His mom had been sympathetic at first, but she'd eventually told him that these were the consequences of his actions and that he needed to figure out how to rebuild his life. I got a call from Jasper about a month ago. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking and that he finally understood why I'd been so upset about the hot tub incident. He said he realized that he'd been disrespectful and immature and that he'd been a terrible husband. Jasper apologized for dismissing my feelings and for talking about our private life with his friends. He said he understood now that what he'd done was wrong and that he was sorry for everything. He asked if there was any chance we could try to work things out. I told him I appreciated his apology but that it was too late. I said I'd moved on and that I was happier without him. Jasper said he understood, but he wanted me to know that he'd learned his lesson and that he would never treat another woman the way he treated me. I hope that's true, but I'm not sure Jasper is capable of real change. His apology felt genuine, but I think he was more sorry about losing everything than he was about hurting me. He was calling me because he was lonely and desperate, not because he'd had some kind of genuine revelation about his behavior. I've been doing well on my own. I started a new job last month that pays better than my old one. I've been reconnecting with old friends and making new ones. I've been taking classes at the community college and thinking about going back to school to finish my degree. I'm not ready to date anyone yet, but I'm not opposed to it. Eventually. I've learned a lot about myself and about what I want in a relationship. I know now that I deserve to be with someone who respects me and values my feelings, not someone who sees me as a problem to be solved or a personality to be changed. Some people have asked me if I regret leaving Jasper over what they still see as a small incident. I don't regret it at all. The hot tub prank was just the tip of the iceberg. The real problem was Jasper's complete inability to respect me as an equal partner in our marriage. I'm grateful that I found out who Jasper really was before we had kids or bought a house together. I'm grateful that I had the strength to leave when I realized the marriage wasn't working. I'm grateful for the support I received from my family and from people online who understood what I was going through. My life is completely different now than it was 6 months ago, but it's better. I'm happier, more confident and more independent. I'm surrounded by people who respect me and care about my well-being. I'm building a life that's based on my own values and goals, not on trying to fit into someone else's idea of what I should be. Jasper is still trying to rebuild his life and figure out what went wrong. His mom updates me occasionally and it sounds like he's struggling. Part of me feels bad for him, but I know that his problems are the result of his own choices. He had every opportunity to treat me with respect and to prioritize our marriage over his friendships, but he chose not to. I'm moving forward and not looking back. Thank you to everyone who supported me through this process. Your comments and messages helped me realize that I wasn't overreacting and that I deserved better than what I was getting. I hope my story helps other people who might be in similar situations. Sometimes standing up for yourself means walking away from everything you thought you wanted. It's scary and difficult, but it's worth it in the end. Now let's move to the next story, story 2. My brother stole my girlfriend because she was rich and had a big inheritance coming. I exposed them at their wedding in front of her wealthy grandparents and they lost their inheritance. Now my family wants me to fix it. I, 28M, need some objective perspectives on a situation that's completely torn my family apart. This involves my older brother, Zachary, 32M, my ex Nadine, 27F, and my parents, who seem to think I'm the villain in this story. Let me start from the beginning. 3 years ago, I met Nadine at my best friend's housewarming party. She immediately stood out, not just because she was beautiful, but because she had this magnetic personality that drew everyone in. She came from old money. Her grandparents had built a tech company from scratch in the 80s that was now worth millions. Nadine worked there as a senior marketing executive, though everyone in our social circle knew it was mainly because of her family connections. The first 6 months of our relationship were like a dream. Nadine was everything I thought I wanted, smart, ambitious and seemingly caring. We had this instant connection and things moved fast. We moved in together after 6 months, which my parents thought was too soon, but I was convinced she was the one. She was always talking about our future, planning expensive trips, discussing which upscale neighborhoods we should live in and hinting at marriage. But looking back, there were so many red flags I chose to ignore. Nadine was obsessed with status and money in a way that made me uncomfortable. She'd constantly compare our lifestyle to her rich friends, making comments about how we needed a bigger apartment or a fancier car. She'd suggest I should take risks with investments or switch to a higher-paying job, even though I was doing well as a software developer at a stable company. She'd make these subtle but cutting remarks about how her grandparents would help set us up in life if they approved of me, implying that my current success wasn't enough. I noticed she'd get especially critical when my brother, Zachary, was around. Zachary had always been the golden child in our family, despite never holding down a job for more than a few months. He'd quit or get fired, then live off our parents until he found something new. But my parents always made excuses for him, saying he was too talented to settle for ordinary jobs. About a year into my relationship with Nadine, Zachary started coming around our place more often. He was between jobs again and would show up unannounced, sometimes staying for hours. I thought nothing of it at first. He was my brother and I was happy. He seemed to be taking an interest in my life for once. But then I started noticing things that felt off. Nadine would be really dressed up when he visited, even on casual weekends. They'd have these long conversations about investments and luxury lifestyles while I was working from home. Sometimes they'd lower their voices. When I walked into the room I had this gut feeling something wasn't right, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. After all, this was my brother and my girlfriend, the two people I trusted most in the world. How wrong I was. The day I discovered the truth started like any other. I left for work in the morning but came home early around lunch because I had a migraine. I heard laughter coming from our bedroom as soon as I opened the front door. When I opened the bedroom door, I found Zachary and Nadine in bed together. What hurt the most wasn't even catching them, it was their reaction. They didn't even try to pretend they were sorry. Nadine actually looked annoyed at being interrupted and said she and Zachary had a special connection that I could never understand. She said they'd been seeing each other for months and that Zachary understood her needs better than I ever could. Zachary just sat there with this smug smile and said something about how I should have seen this coming, given how well they got along. I moved out that same day. I packed what I could carry and went to stay with a friend. The next few weeks were a blur of pain, anger, and disbelief. But what made everything so much worse was my parents' reaction. Instead of supporting me or being angry at their son for betraying his own brother, they actually tried to convince me this was a good thing. They said I should be happy that at least Nadine was staying in the family. They suggested that since Zachary was the older son, he deserved someone successful like Nadine more than I did. My mom even had the nerve to say that maybe this was for the best, because Nadine's family connections could help Zachary finally establish himself in his career. I cut contact with all of them after that. I focused on my work, moved to a new apartment and tried to rebuild my life. Then last month, I received a wedding invitation from Zachary and Nadine. I immediately threw it in the trash. But my parents started what I can only call a harassment campaign. They showed up at my place multiple times, called me non-stop and sent endless texts. They claimed my absence would raise too many questions in our social circle. They were especially worried about what Nadine's grandparents would think. Apparently, they didn't know how Nadine and Zachary's relationship really started. My parents literally begged me to attend and give a speech. They said it would show everyone there were no hard feelings in the family. After days of relentless pressure and guilt-tripping, I agreed, not because I forgave them, but because I was tired of being painted as the bitter ex who couldn't move on. The wedding was exactly as extravagant as you'd expect from someone like Nadine. Her grandparents were the guests of honor. They'd apparently promised her a significant inheritance if she settled down with someone responsible and proved she could maintain a stable relationship. Everyone kept talking about how perfect Zachary and Nadine were for each other, how they were soulmates. It made me sick. When it was time for speeches, I took the microphone. I started by talking about love and trust and how sometimes the people closest to us can surprise us. Then I shared my story, how I found my girlfriend and brother in bed together, how they showed no remorse, how they'd been sneaking around for months. While I worked to support Nadine, I kept my tone calm and professional, even thanking Nadine's grandparents for being there to hear the truth about their granddaughter's character and choices. The silence in the room was deafening. Nadine's grandparents looked absolutely horrified. Apparently, they'd been told Nadine and Zachary met through mutual friends after she and I had amicably broken up. They left immediately and I heard through mutual friends that they were reconsidering Nadine's position in both the family business and their will. Zachary tried to confront me, but I just walked out. My parents were furious, saying I'd ruined everything, but I felt relieved. The truth was finally out. Now my phone is blowing up with angry messages from Zachary and Nadine. They're saying I ruined their future and their chances at the inheritance. My parents are demanding I fix things, but I don't see why I should clean up their mess, Ida. Update 1. I wasn't planning to update so soon, but the fallout from the wedding has been more intense than I expected. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks and I need to get it off my chest. First, the biggest news, my friend who works at Nadine's family company told me that her grandparents have officially cut her out of their will. They also called an emergency board meeting to discuss her position in the company. Apparently, they were already concerned about her materialistic behavior and lack of work ethic, but learning how she and Zachary got together was the final straw. They felt betrayed, not just by her actions but by her attempts to manipulate them with lies about her relationship with Zachary. Through the same friend, I learned some interesting details about Zachary and Nadine's plan. They had been scheming this for months before the wedding. Their original plan was to get married quickly, prove to her grandparents that they were a stable, responsible couple and secure her inheritance. They had even started looking at million-dollar houses and luxury cars, convinced that the money was practically theirs already. Zachary was so confident about their plan working that he quit his latest job, a decent position at a marketing firm that our uncle had helped him get, because he thought he wouldn't need to work once they had Nadine's inheritance. Since the wedding, my phone hasn't stopped buzzing with messages from Nadine. She switches between begging and threatening me. Every few hours. One minute she's pleading with me to talk to her grandparents and explain that I exaggerated things at the wedding. The next minute she's threatening legal action for defamation and saying she'll make my life hell. She keeps claiming that I misrepresented their relationship and that things weren't as simple as I made them sound in my speech. But when I asked her to explain exactly how finding her in bed with my brother could possibly be misrepresented, she had no answer. She just started ranting about how I was too narrow-minded to understand their special connection. What really gets me is that my parents are still taking their side in all of this. They showed up at my apartment yesterday unannounced, barging in. As soon as I opened the door, my mom was crying about how I needed to help fix this, because family comes first. My dad kept saying that what's done is done and now it's my responsibility to help my brother. They actually had the nerve to suggest that I should contact Nadine's grandparents and tell them I lied at the wedding because I was jealous of Zachary and Nadine's relationship. When I refused, my dad got angry and said I was being selfish and immature. He said that as the younger son I should be more understanding of Zachary's needs. But the most revealing conversation came last night around 2 a.m. I got a call from Zachary. He was completely drunk and could barely form coherent sentences, but what he said was eye-opening. He started ranting about how I destroyed his chance at an easy life. He admitted that he'd pursued Nadine because he knew about her inheritance prospects. He kept saying things like, "You have a career, you don't need the money. Like I do, when I'm the older son, I deserve this more than you." He even revealed that he and Nadine had discussed ways to minimize contact with her grandparents after getting the inheritance so they wouldn't have to keep up the responsible couple act. The more he talked, the clearer it became that their entire relationship was built on greed and manipulation. He bragged about how easy it was to seduce Nadine, saying she was already unhappy with my stable but modest lifestyle. According to him, all he had to do was promise her a more exciting life and she was ready to betray me. He seemed proud of this, like deceiving his own brother was some kind of achievement. The whole conversation made me feel sick. When I told him how disgusted I was, he just laughed and said I was always too serious about things like loyalty and honesty. Then he started crying and demanding I fix things with Nadine's grandparents, because he deserved a good life after everything. Our parents put him through whatever that means. Our parents have done nothing but support him his entire life. I hung up on him and blocked his number. I've also blocked Nadine, but she keeps finding new ways to contact me. She even got some of our mutual friends to relay messages, though most of them stopped after I explained the full situation. I'll update again if anything significant happens, but right now I'm just trying to process everything. The level of manipulation and entitlement from everyone involved is overwhelming. The only positive thing is that the truth is finally out and Zachary and Nadine are facing the consequences of their actions. Update 2, things have gotten so much worse than I could have imagined. After my last update, the situation with Zachary and Nadine spiraled completely out of control. Their relationship fell apart spectacularly once they realized the inheritance money wasn't coming. At first they tried to maintain appearances. Nadine's parents got her a job at a regular marketing firm after she lost her position at the family company, but she quit after 2 weeks because she said the work was beneath her. Zachary still hasn't found a job. Apparently, he's been telling potential employers that he's taking time off to deal with family issues. They started fighting constantly about money. Their wedding had cost a fortune because they were so sure they'd have the inheritance to pay it off. Now they're drowning in debt. They had to move out of their luxury apartment and are staying at my parents' house, which is just making everything worse. Last week things reached a breaking point. I was at work in the middle of an important client meeting when my parents showed up unannounced. They walked right past reception and burst into the conference room. My mom was crying hysterically, saying I had to help them because Zachary was talking about declaring bankruptcy. My dad was red-faced and shouting about family obligations. They caused such a scene that security had to escort them out. My boss called me into his office afterward. He was understanding about the situation, but warned me that I needed to keep my family drama away from work. I was mortified. These were clients we've been trying to land for months and now they probably think we're completely unprofessional. That evening I went home to find my parents sitting in my apartment building's lobby. They'd been waiting for hours. My dad started and immediately about how I needed to help Zachary financially. They had this whole plan worked out. I would let Zachary and Nadine move in with me, help them pay off their wedding debt and maybe even get Zachary a job at my company. When I refused, my dad completely lost it. He started shouting about how I was a terrible brother and a selfish son. He actually threatened to disown me if I didn't help Zachary get back on his feet. My mom just sat there crying, saying things like we raised you better than this and how can you be so cruel to your own brother. It was like they were living in some alternate reality where I was the bad guy for not wanting to support the people who betrayed me. That was the moment I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I went up to my apartment, packed what I could carry and booked a hotel room. I've blocked my parents, Zachary and Nadine, on everything: phone, email, social media. I'm looking for a new apartment in a different part of the city where they won't be able to find me easily. Word of all this drama has spread through our extended family. My cousin, Lisa, called to tell me that my parents have been telling everyone that I'm mentally unstable and vindictive, claiming that I sabotaged Zachary's chance at happiness because I was jealous of him. Most of my cousins know better and support me, but my aunts and uncles are divided. Some think I should help Zachary because he's family, while others are appalled by how my parents are handling this. This whole situation has made me realize how toxic my family dynamic has always been. Looking back, I can see a pattern of my parents always enabling Zachary's behavior. Because he's the oldest son. They covered for him when he got kicked out of college for cheating. They paid off his credit card debt multiple times. They always made excuses for why he couldn't hold down a job, and now they expect me to do the same. A few days ago, I ran into one of Nadine's bridesmaids at a coffee shop. She told me that Nadine has been telling people that I manipulated her grandparents and ruined her life out of spite. Apparently. She conveniently leaves out the part about cheating on me with my brother. She's trying to paint herself as the victim in all this, and some people are actually buying it. I'm working with HR to transfer to a different branch of my company, preferably in another city. I realize now that I need a completely fresh start, away from all this drama and manipulation. I'll post another update if anything significant happens, but right now I'm focusing on rebuilding my life somewhere. New update 3. This will be my final update. After going no contact with my family, I finally found some peace. I took that transfer my company offered and moved to a different city. The past 3 months have been focused on building a new life and, honestly, it's been going better than I expected. But of course, news about my family still reaches me through mutual friends. Zachary and Nadine's marriage imploded spectacularly without the inheritance to look forward to. They had nothing holding them together. Their constant fighting about money turned into bitter arguments about whose fault it was that their plan failed. Eventually Nadine moved back in with her parents, who were also furious with her for embarrassing the family in front of their social circle. A friend who still talks to my brother told me that Zachary tried to contact Nadine's grandparents directly. He showed up at their office unannounced, claiming he could explain everything. Security had to escort him out. Apparently he was shouting about how they were ruining his life by cutting off the inheritance. Real classy move there, bro. Zachary is still living with our parents, unemployed and bitter. He's been telling anyone who'll listen that I destroyed his life because I was jealous of his happiness. He even tried to spread rumors at my old workplace that I had mental health issues and had made up the whole cheating story. Fortunately, my former colleagues know better. Nadine isn't doing much better. Her parents managed to get her another job through their connections, but it's nowhere near as prestigious as her position at her grandparents' company. From what I hear, she's been complaining non-stop about having to work a normal job like everyone else. She even tried to start a social media campaign painting herself as a victim of family betrayal, but it backfired when people who knew the truth started commenting. Last week, my cousin reached out with news that my parents wanted to arrange a family dinner to talk things through. They claimed they'd had time to reflect and realize their mistakes. They wanted to make amends and rebuild our relationship. For a moment I actually considered it, but then my cousin mentioned that the real reason for the dinner was to discuss how I could help Zachary financially. Apparently, he's in serious debt from the wedding and some bad investments he made when he thought he'd have access to Nadine's inheritance. My parents thought that, since I'm doing well in my career, I should step up and help my brother get back on his feet. Some things never change. They're still trying to make me responsible for fixing Zachary's mistakes. They still see me as the younger son who should sacrifice his own well-being for his older brother. The only difference is that now they're trying to be sneakier about their manipulation. I declined the dinner invitation. I've realized that nothing has really changed. They still expect me to be the family scapegoat. My parents aren't sorry for how they treated me. They're just sorry that their plan to secure Zachary's future through Nadine fell apart. This whole experience taught me something important: sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. Blood relation doesn't give people the right to abuse your trust or take advantage of you. I'm happier now than I've been in years, building a life surrounded by people who actually respect me. Someone asked me recently if I regret exposing Zachary and Nadine at their wedding. The answer is no. They chose to build their relationship on betrayal and lies, and now they're facing the consequences of their choices. I won't apologize for telling the truth. Thanks to everyone who supported me through this journey. Your advice and encouragement helped me stay strong when I doubted myself. This is my final update. I'm closing this chapter of my life for good.